Hey guys, what's up? This is Yuri. In this video, I would like to show to you a game which arguably has been one of the most important games of my entire chess career. This game was played in round 2 of my most recent tournament, Spice Cup. It was played in October of 2020 in St. Louis, Missouri. The intrigue in this game was that if I had won it, I would become an international master. I had all the 3 norms, and I just needed to cross the rating of 2400, and if I won this game, that would happen. So I thought I would show the most interesting, the most decisive fragment of it. The opening went fairly well, I would say, and at this point, white is definitely somewhat better. White has the bishop pair, which definitely would prove rather significant when it comes to fight on both flanks at the same time, and black's pawn on b7 is definitely a bit of a target at the moment. On top of that, black's minor pieces are rather disorganized, I would say. All the black pieces are positioned on the A file, which is quite weird. I continued with king to f2. Now, to be honest, there is no really easy answer to the following question, but still I would like you to give it some thought. How do you think black should defend? Take your time and make a decision, and we'll continue. Alright, I hope you did give this some thought. So, to be honest, the one of the very important defensive ideas in many positions, not just this one, is that if you hold on to the material a little too religiously, so to speak, and have to get all of your pieces to very passive spots, unfortunately, oftentimes it happens that you still end up losing this material, but in a situation when all of your pieces are very passive, which is definitely not a good thing at all. So, a very good defensive method oftentimes is immediately giving up something that is a weakness that's likely to be gone anyway. And so, in my opinion here, black's best move would have been knight to c4. Now, I would immediately get to win this pawn, but after knight e3, king e3, and f6, we would get a position with 4 pawns versus 3 on the same flank, and a pair of rooks and a pair of bishops. Now, obviously there is no doubt that this position is massively better for white. White's going to push for 100 moves, and objectively the defense is rather difficult. I would say that perhaps the probability is about 50-50 between white winning and black holding this. I don't think it's a mathematical win necessarily, but it's definitely going to be hard to play this. However, it's also not that easy for white to actually find a way to break through. At some point I'll have to start creating a passed pawn, but it's not a very easy thing to do, especially with a black rook, king and bishop blockading it. And if pawns get traded, of course black would come closer and closer to achieving a draw. So that's how I think my opponent should have defended. Even though, of course, I would have enjoyed pushing in this position a ton. I would be able to press for another 100 moves, and it's not even clear if black can objectively hold. However, he played the move bishop to d5, trying to hold on to the pawn, which is not a very bad move, but now black has to play extremely precisely to defend. I continued with rook d6. Now, my first question to you would be, what if black? The move bishop d5 actually is interesting in that regard that it kind of prevents f4, and which would activate my bishop. So I continued with rook d6. I would like his bishop to go back to e6 so I can play f4 nevertheless and have my bishop enjoy the long diagonal. But what would have happened if he had played bishop to c6? What would you do here as white? Alright, I think white's direction of play is actually very, very interesting. While it may not be possible, unfortunately, to simply win that pawn on b7, what white can definitely do is utilize his bishop pair and the rook for a different purpose, which is playing against a weak black king. It is weak because we have the bishop pair and the rook which are all ready to attack, and because black already has some liabilities, such as the move h6. For example, if I play bishop to h3, I might already start creating some very annoying threats like rook d8 check, king h7, bishop f5 check. Black would have to play g6, then the long diagonal will get extremely weak, the rook and the bishop will start harassing the black king, things would get very, very tough. Or possibly I could have first gone rook to d8 check and then bishop h3 f5, but nevertheless white's main goal should be by all means to activate that light squared bishop of his. My opponent continued with bishop e6, there followed f4, b5 and rook to b6. Now, he can no longer hold the pawn with, say, rook b4. I can at least play bishop to d2 and force him to retreat when, of course, he already has to simply give up a pawn at least, and the knight's now hanging. That's no fun. My opponent, I guess, could have still gone knight c4 with the same idea of getting this position. But he continued with rook to a2. Now, would you take the pawn as white or not? If yes, what's gonna happen, and if not, why? Please take a couple minutes. Alright, I hope you did take the time. So we should not be taking this pawn. Now, after rook b5, there is no need to fear bishop to c4 with a double attack, because we can simply play rook b8 check and then just defend this pawn. White's a pawn up, his position is easily winning. Maybe not as easily, it'll take work, but it is winning. However, there is unfortunately rook takes e2 check. And after king e2, there is a bishop c4 check, and now the rook will be gone, and black's likely achieving a draw on the same flank. Now, rook to b8 check followed, king h7, and of course, as I said, we're playing for mate, so I went bishop e4, check. Now, how do we win after g6? Very good. If black continues with g6, there is bishop d4, and unfortunately this is going to be mate. That's not a good thing at all. Black cannot really avoid it. I mean, black can start giving up stuff with some f6, but obviously I'll take it. The mate's still a threat, the pawn's pinned, and if say bishop g8, okay, I may not mate you immediately in one move, but obviously the attack will still decide the game in a move or two. Like say I can transfer the rook this way or push the h-pawn, whatever, white would win. So my opponent played f5, bishop d3, hitting the pawn another time, rook to b2. And now comes another question to you guys. I'm trying to make it as interactive as possible. This is exactly how you learn. So I would highly encourage all of you not to simply keep watching, but to try to answer these questions if what you want is just not, entertain yourselves, but improve. That's my goal too, to help you improve. So how to continue with white? Alright, this time around, it is possible to capture this pawn, and white will actually win a pawn. However, after taking, we'll still have to play with 4 versus 3 on the same flank. Now, the bishop pair is no longer that scary, given that everything is on the same flank, and likely, white's position is simply winning, but it'll still take work. But the black king is so weak that I see no need to capture, instead I'd like to play for mate rather. So I went g4. Now, there's a massive problem. If black just makes a move, I would play gf5, attacking the bishop, whatever, f6 check, and white's more or less mating black. So, my opponent definitely shouldn't do that. If he goes g6, the same familiar bishop d4 wins. It would have won even if the rook was not being hit, because the threat of a checkmate on h8 is unstoppable, but there is also a rook hanging. So I played g4 and he replied with bishop c4. This was slightly unexpected, to be honest with you. And I would actually rather say that this was rather unexpected. I was a little shocked when I saw this move. My opponent actually was about to get flagged. So he played this on the last seconds, and I thought, well, what this for sure should not be good. Then I started calculating. I thought maybe there are some interesting things about this move actually. Now, the point is that black's hitting this pawn on e2, he's threatening to play bishop d3, right? So, if you take on f5, black's idea supposedly is to go g6. Now, the bishop cannot go back to d3, and if it goes to e4, well, there is rook e2 check. So, I'm not saying that these opportunities are bad, I'm just showing you some of his ideas. Now, this is a very decisive moment of the game. I would give you a hint, white has a very strong continuation. White can win by force, but of course you need to calculate deeply and precisely. So how would you continue here as white? Find a forced win. Take as much time as you need, up to say 10 minutes. Alright, let's get into it. So at first I was thinking bishop f5 g6. Now I was considering some moves like bishop d4 because it's a threat of a mate and to the rook. Well, it looks a little uncomfortable that we are giving up this pawn on e2 with a check, and then black can take the bishop. We'll return to that shortly. Well, white, if he really wants to win by force, has to do this kind of. I mean, if I take on c4, for example, he can just take back and then he'll lose his pawn, but it's still a lot of play. I can play some bishop f5, g6, and bishop e4, and I thought this position is much better for us, because again, we keep attacking, but it's still not very clear. Even though probably it is kind of clear, but still some work is required. But as I thought, I saw the following line. Bishop d4, threatening mate and the rook. Rook takes e2, check, king f3. gf. Now I'm about to checkmate him, but he has the escape square on g6, and so I thought I would just play g takes on f5. Now I'm taking the square away and I'm about to mate him. The only move there is bishop g8, but then his rook stays undefended. Let's see, does this work? To be honest, was rather nervous at this point, which usually never really happens to me when I'm playing. I obviously have played, hundreds of tournament games. Nothing really can bother me at this point. However, this is one of the most important games I've ever played. If I win, I'm an international master, that's it. And the position is surely winning in several ways. So the idea of giving up a piece, well, it either wins right away or you'd better not do it. Imagine how stupid it would be to lose and lose the rating you need and then get, much farther away from the title. So here I played, after checking this several times, I realized it does work and played bishop d4, he took, king f3. Now mate is coming, so he took my bishop and I took back. Mate is coming, and there is no defense. He played bishop g8, but after king e2, white is of course completely winning. A lot of material up, there is still a very weak king, there is a passed pawn and still mating threats. My opponent played h5, trying to make some room for the king. King f3, knight c6, check, here, check, check, and if king h6, there is bishop g5, check, mate. So after bishop to f6 check, he had resigned. This was a very talented junior player from the United States, rated about 2370 FIDE, clearly an extremely strong player, but I managed to win in such a beautiful manner. As you might see from one of my previous videos about the game when I got my last norm, that game was very murky. I went through a loss and I was risking a ton, and after that game my rating became 2399, while you need 2400 to be an international master. And I even told someone in a joking way, of course I'm upset I didn't make it, however, it's good I didn't in a way, because I would prefer to become an international master by winning a really good game, not some, messy game when I'm almost losing. And luckily enough, that's exactly what happened here. So I wanted to show with you, dear viewers, this highlight from my chess career and from my very recent tournament, something that definitely made me very relaxed and happy. A big milestone, international master title has been accomplished. There is only one higher title, grandmaster, which we'll see about. But yeah, I wanted to show this. I wanted to to be honest, boast a little, because that game was really, really important to me. But at the same time, I simply wanted, of course, to teach you some chess and show you some calculation and attacking ideas, even in a seemingly quiet endgame position. Thank you for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe and like buttons if you enjoyed the video, and comment below. And I'll see you in my next videos. Take care.